Ready? Okay, so we've got Rob again, and all of yous have asked for his return. So this is called this a part 2. Honestly, they have. He doesn't believe me. He doesn't believe me because he does offend people. But it's a great thing. His intention is always to lead with the truth and to lead with the heart. And a lot of people do find it quite difficult to accept the truth. What do you think, Rob? It's one of the biggest challenges for a lot of people, isn't it? Accepting the truth.
It's the truth hurts, but again, the truth can set you free.
But when the truth hurts, don't you find a lot of people who live in states of so-called depression? That's it. A lot of them, and it's such a sensitive subject for a lot of people because you could offend a lot of people.
You could,
but actually, if you understand depression, I've done a podcast before, but I know you're primarily on emotion and mind and understanding it to a level of consciousness that a lot of people don't understand. What we want to, when you say the truth hurts, that physically comes out of their body as well, doesn't it?
It can hurt, yes, because the whole brain is interconnected.
Yeah.
And that means that the brain is also interconnected through the body. So you can't have a mind and body that's separate. They have to be one system.
Yeah.
So obviously, if you're going to have done something that affects the mind, or you go an emotional release, yes, that is going to affect the body in a good way, but we tend to judge it in a bad way. So, for example, if you're a school teacher, they typically, not everyone, but usually a little bit stressed, and it's a common theme where the end of term comes, they come away from the stress, and all of a sudden there's a cold, flu, some sort of virus, or just generally feeling wiped out, down, and you could label that as depression, but you can't get too caught up in these labels. Now, and sometimes you might have an emotional release. That's a good sign. That's the same as what we talked about in the last video, where, you know what, if you train me in the gym now, and maybe not later, maybe not tomorrow, probably the next day, and I ache and I can barely move, that's a pretty good sign.
Do you find though that's controlled pain though? Because people don't ask to be depressed, do they? Or people don't ask for lower back pain, or people don't...
we live in a society where everyone's got to be upbeat, positive all the time, or something wrong. How are you? I'm fine, thank you. Hey everybody!
But
it's great today. The sun is out and I'm happy. Okay, let's tell the truth.
It's truth. That's true. But the problem is that's also fake, isn't it?
It's completely fake.
So when we having people saying be positive, stop being negative. Is negative a bad thing? Is being negative?
No, absolutely. It's like you want the balance. It's about being truthful. It's about being authentic. For example, very, very common. The reason people want to be positive and you've got to be upbeat and things like this because they don't want to appear weak.
Right.
Now, my question to that is, how, if you're being positive all the time because you don't want to appear weak, so you've got to be strong, how is overvaluing somebody else's opinion of you strong? And how is being authentic in your truth and valuing your own feelings above the opinion of others a weakness?
But that is the problem with society.
It's completely back to front.
Yeah.
Being authentic and being in the moment and truthful, and if there are tears running down your face,
that's good.
Regardless of other people's judgments and opinions based on their own perceptions and values, that's strength. It's a strength beyond a strength. Right?
And that's when we talk about the heart and the brain being in sync. Because most people who are trying to be positive and not allowing negative emotions, what the brain's actually doing is going be positive, but the heart doesn't agree with it because it's feeling that hurt.
Yeah, that's a good way to explain it. That's a good way to put it.
So when we don't lead with the heart, when the heart and brain are not in sync, and bearing in mind we know that the heart beats before there's even a central nervous system.
Yeah, that's a big research from HeartMath.
So the heart has its own brain, and science are only now catching up with this fact.
Yeah.
So we have to understand when the brain and heart are not in line, that's when problems start to occur.
Yes, and there's a lot of variables here, and it can get quite complex. And I like that because we are complex, and it's like there's a lot of unanswers. I mean, the entire medical model tries to understand the human body and sometimes the mind is a theoretical model.
But don't you find, without offending the scientists and the doctors, don't you find the science model, let's say, looks for how things happen rather than why things happen?
There are different sciences. I'm reading a good book at the minute. I forget the name of the guy who wrote it, called The Science Delusion. Very, very good book. He's done a lot of work on different subjects. So...
But I talked about this on the last podcast, and we're talking about veganism. But the problem is do we actually need science to tell us how to live healthy, to listen to our intuition, to eat healthy, to train in a specific way which is better than that way? Because that's not necessarily true for everyone.
Not necessarily. It's an interesting debate. I personally, this is based on my experience and belief. If you take the word education, its original word comes from Latin educo, which means to draw out from within, meaning the wisdom and knowledge is already inside.
Brilliant. You heard that, and I've always said this to people.
Have you?
When the person comes to me with back pain, let's say, lower back pain, let's talk that for instance, what happens is you ask them, when did you start to experience lower back pain? And they say, oh, I was hoovering and my back went. Now we know there's something emotionally definitely going on in that moment. Because especially once I've tested them on a physical level, and I've looked at structure and everything is aligned, there's nothing, and I can't, flexibility is great. You know, the only problem is they're getting the specific pain. Some of them will say it's come and gone, so I've not really done anything about it. I've managed it myself. Now we know the lower back is connected to the emotions of not feeling supported in life. And also financial worries and concerns.
Depending on how someone perceives financial worries and concerns.
Right. Okay.
If they think financial worries and concerns are, I can't support myself, that can possibly lead to lower back. If it's just a freaking annoyance because all this money keeps going everywhere and the missus spends it all, then you know what? I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying I hear that from maybe a friend last night or something because it's in my brain. Then a person can just get a headache.
Right. So emotions.
Some people might get a shoulder pain.
But the problem is
how they perceive it.
But then this is where the problem. What I mean by science and the medical world is they're more interested in how things happen, and then they'll treat it with a drug, or they'll remove a kidney.
Okay, in other words, symptoms, not causes.
Yes. So we want to know why they happen. I'm more interested in why is this happening.
I am. Yeah.
Does that make sense? So and you're the same. And this is
and
why.
if you think about it, when we were kids, that's what we said. Why?
Exactly.
Why? Why? And then eventually we told, shut up, we just accepted this is the norm. But we want to keep, I mean, I like that curiosity, that's part of my design, is to be constantly curious. Why, what if this, and what about that, and I challenge everything. So that's a really good, I think that's a really good place to be, is I've heard it many, many times, I've a lot of teachings, learn to live in the space of a question. And that doesn't mean constantly just rattling your brain, it means being an allowance of, that's possible.
You're allowed to question it.
You're allowed to question. And remember, everything is an interesting point of view. Because if someone says you're an idiot, well, just smile and say, well, that's an interesting point of view. Then if you understand that perception is projection without exception, you can also say, well, that's an interesting point of view that you have about me that you actually have about you.
And focus and attention equals creation.
Say that one again. I've never heard that one. Focus,
so,
what is it?
Focus and attention equals creation.
Focus and attention equals creation. Let me write that one down. I like that one.
So, see, I need to learn
focus
something.
and attention.
So,
let me think about that. Focus and attention equals creation. Yeah.
You see, in physics, you ask any physicist and they'll always say reality comes from perception. Ask a neuroscientist and they'll say your brain controls your biochemistry. We ask a religious leader and they'll say you were created in the image and likeness of the creator. You ask a spiritual person and they'll say life doesn't happen to us, it happens from and for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all trying to teach
So,
the same
but there's no denying in what you're saying, Rob.
Yeah.
There's no scientific evidence that ever denies what you're saying.
No.
None.
And there's also
So-
no scientific evidence to support the fact that when you've got something going on with your body, that it's wrong.
Exactly. So
No.
the body is this super highly intelligent system that isn't doing anything wrong. So people with now what they're saying over.
I'm not saying you don't need to sit like if someone's got some real stuff going on.
Yeah,
I
of
know I
course.
won't label things, but and get real deep. But
No, label them a little bit.
You want me to- okay,
Label.
so-
So let's say depression, for instance.
well, I was even going to go cancer.
Okay, let's go depression, then we'll go
Okay,
cancer.
okay.
Because remember, depression is so-called the mind.
Yeah.
So because we're talking about how important the mind is, in schools, Rob, we're never taught anything about the mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Ever.
Not really. No.
Never. We're not
I
taught.
wasn't. I don't know if they do now,
But they don't. They don't. Okay, so my children are at school and they're not conditioned anything about the mind.
Okay.
This is why now, statistically, but also if you look at the thesaurus, they say there's, 3,137 different names for emotions. 3,137 in the thesaurus. 1,051 of them are positive and 2,086 are negative.
Okay.
Right? So our focus even goes on our education. It shows how much more negativity there is in the world.
Right. Okay.
Does this make sense? Okay.
Is that
So
reality? Is that how we labelled it?
but this is the problem. That is reality. That is what's going on in today's
Okay.
world. How we perceive it is up to us.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense? But
Yeah.
but ultimately education is focused. The words, if there's something more overpowering, remember it's all about balance. Mm-hmm. But if negativity is up there, double with what positivity is there.
Right.
Can you see where education systems are going?